Welcome to Empowered Leadership. We share candid conversations with successful leaders about what it takes to cultivate the leadership, life, and legacy you desire, and to do it with confidence, ease, and joy. I'm your host, Alexandra Reese. Today, I'm joined by Omark Holmes, the Chief Marketing Officer for Visit Huntington Beach, the destination marketing organization that brings over 4 million visitors to Huntington Beach every year. Omark is a marketing and communications expert with over 2 decades of experience in leadership positions with notable organizations like LA Metro. Although I know Omark personally from our work together in Santa Monica, where we worked on a groundbreaking new approach to destination perception studies and destination master plans. Not only is Omark great at leading innovation, which I found out through that work, he's also wonderful at building high-performing teams that are engaged and love to come to work. And to learn more about how he's accomplished that feat and other insights from his journey, you'll have to stay tuned. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, Omark. Well, thank you so much for joining me and those who are tuning in on Empowered Leadership. I really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am doing well. The sun is shining. I got a long walk in this morning, so I'm feeling like I'm showing up as my best self, which is always good.
Right on, right on. Same here. I just before this podcast, I went on a walk around the pier here in Huntington Beach with my 2 Shiba Inus, and that's always wonderful. You know, my dogs, the Pacific view, the sun, the ocean is beautiful.
I think that's literally the American dream. Well, as the name of this show is Empowered Leadership, the first question I always like to ask my guests is, what does empowered leadership mean to you?
Great question, a loaded one. Empowered leadership to me, means, having the sense, the wherewithal, the ability kind of to recognize the best in your teammates and kind of leading the charge and fostering an environment for those folks to kind of rise to that occasion. I'm a big believer in that. So I think that for me, that's what that means, bringing out the best in folks.
So assuming good intent and creating an environment where people can show up as their best selves.
100%.
I love that. Tell me more about when you think about what it takes to create that environment, what does success look like? How do you know you've created that environment?
Wow, that's a great question. There's so many versions of that, I would say, but I think transformation, to just sum it up, when you can witness that transformation, that person's journey from point A to point B, whatever that may be, whether it's working on improving a skill set or addressing some personal issues that may be getting in the way of their professional goals, or even just mentorship, someone who's looking to learn more or work on things a little outside of their comfort zone. When you can see that transformation, that shift, that ascension, that's success.
Yeah, it's like when you see people feeling vulnerable enough and comfortable enough to really stretch themselves to grow. That's a great sign that you've created a space in which people can really pursue growth and show up as their best selves.
Absolutely. Totally.
How have you approached creating that environment? Something you shared with me, maybe as a preface or to set context a few months ago when we last connected, was that culture is something you have to work on every day. It isn't something that you set and it's one and done. So given that context, I know you think about putting in the work every day to creating that space where people can show up as their best selves. How do you do it?
Absolutely. Wow. You're asking great questions, Alexandra. For me, it's, I don't know if this is the best answer, but, over time you get better at it. The longer your career is, the more perspective you have to kind of compare scenarios, experiences in your previous jobs, right? And, you kind of recognize the best in what you had in each of those environments. And with the next job, you work to carry those over and then kind of work on the things that you thought were maybe had room for improvement. And so, certainly at this juncture of my career here at Visit Huntington Beach, I started about 2.5 years ago, and I inherited a whole team with, that knew each other already. And there was already a history here, both with each other, but also just as an organization culturally. And so, as the head of the marketing department, it was kind of my job to kind of like, learn of that, legacy culture environment, and kind of figure out where I need to go to kind of take it in the direction that I wanted to, which again harkens back to your earlier question about how can I create an environment for journey level career people to really grow in their element and feel vulnerable, as you said, to kind of take a chance, explore, and know that it's okay to fail to ultimately find that end success. And so that was my focus here. Each team member had an individual journey towards what that looked like. As I mentioned, with one of my colleagues, it was more of a, personal thing to flesh out that personal barriers, right, to kind of address so that she can get to where we need to get her to. Others was more about wanting more structure and direction and purpose and leadership in that sense. And then for some of the more junior staff members, it was just building a path for growth,
There were a few things I heard that I want to pull out and highlight. And one is the importance of, when you come in as a leader, really understanding what's the legacy culture I'm coming into.
Absolutely.
And the second thing that you didn't say explicitly, but was embedded in your response, is the way you're thinking about culture. It's not just the relationships or the vibe we have when we're together. It's really about what are the individual needs that people have so that they can show up and achieve what we need them to and they want to achieve in the organization. And then what are the policies that we need to put into place and the plans that we need to put into place to enable that?
Absolutely, Alexandra. Just well spoken. And that's literally what we had to do here, and again, back to that point, it was different for each team member, and so it's just been wonderful to have been able to have the opportunity here at VHB to kind of employ that and enact that and create an environment that allows my colleagues to grow, and boy have they. It's been wonderful to witness.
How has that focus on individualized growth and development in service of building that cohesive organizational culture changed the way you would define the overarching culture and performance and impact of the organization?
Great question. I would say that the team here at VHB, and they've always had a team spirit. But there may have been, in just my personal opinion, there may have been instances in where the benefits and outcomes of the team maybe more so than it needs to be superseded the needs of the individual. And so what happens when you do that is, there's this monotony or homogenized approach that happens where, it's about the end goal. It's about the sum and the whole of the parts, but not the parts though, right? At the expense of really thinking about what are the parts that play into the bigger machine, right? That makes the engine run. And so, if these parts are starting to fall apart, the larger plan starts to crumble as well. And that's kind of what we were potentially facing. It was like, okay, I got to focus on the needs of the individuals here. What is it that they want to do? How do they envision themselves growing? What would make them want to stay here at the team, right? And feel like they're still contributing. And so by addressing those individual needs, that feeds up to the collective because everyone shares the common goal of team success, but are also feeling like individually, they're being challenged and heard and nurtured.
Yeah, I don't think that point about achieving team success requires every individual to have achieved personal success can be overstated. And I often hear, especially in larger organizations from leaders, that's just not possible because we're so big. I can't meet every individual person's need. And my response to that is always focus on empowering your managers. Because you, as an executive, may not be able to meet every single person's needs. You absolutely can't in a large organization directly, but
Mhm.
indirectly by equipping managers to do that for the handful of people that they support, you can accomplish that ultimate objective. And you
Absolutely.
can't get big change without every individual making small incremental progress in their own life and how they show up.
Absolutely, Alexandra. And here's another thing. I don't know if this applies exactly to this, but it reminds me of something that a lot of larger organizations, even sometimes just leaders in general, conflate, and that's the notion of happiness and professional satisfaction or satisfaction. When that example you just brought up, I literally can hear in their heads, them receiving that feedback as they're being charged to make employees happy. So I often joke with team members and be like, my job's not to make you happy. My job is to make sure that you feel heard, respected, and that you have the support that you need to succeed professionally, right? And so my argument is there, as a byproduct of that, people do find a sense of happiness in the sense of they feel respected, satisfied, challenged, invigorated at work versus the visceral sense of it, which I think often a lot of leaders conflate or think in that realm, you know what I mean? And so they're like, of course you cannot, your job is not to make every single person happy, and especially in a larger organization, that's pretty large task, if not impossible. But I absolutely do not believe, even in large organizations, that there cannot be systems, environments created so that every single employee feels supported and has the tools they need to succeed.
What an incredible distinction. I hadn't thought about it that way,
Mm.
but that's a really powerful message that a job as a leader isn't to make you happy. Their job is to empower you and give you the support and the tools you need to be successful. And ultimately, in doing so, the hope would be that you're able to find fulfillment through your work, and that contributes to a sense of personal satisfaction and happiness. But that's not what a leader's job is. And I think what happens often is people get stuck in that trap of trying to make people happy, and then it doesn't work and they get frustrated. Or employees get stuck in the trap of expecting a leader to do that, and then they get frustrated because those surface level needs aren't met, even if that's not what really is critical to empowering people to show up and do their best work.
Absolutely, Alexandra.
So, you've talked a little bit about one of your own approaches to leadership development for yourself, which is really creating space for self reflection. So, looking back at experiences, exploring what can I learn from that? How can I apply that to my current context? What other strategies, tactics, or approaches have you taken to your own self development and self leadership?
Wow, Alexandra, as corny as this sounds, it is absolutely my number one mantra approach, thought process in terms of ensuring that I continue to grow as a leader. And that is, and I've shared this with all of my, I've had wonderful conversations with all of my previous bosses, and even my current boss about this concept. And that is, I've always loved mentorship. I've done it in my personal life as well as professional life. But what I always tell journey level or younger career folks, or even like I said, or even some of my bosses and superiors and those kind of intense, more private conversations is, to me, a leader is someone who is a teacher, right? But is also and always a student as well. I always say that once any leader or someone in a position of power feels that they've achieved 100% perfection and they feel like they don't have anything left to learn from anyone, whether it's a colleague, a mentor of their own, or even from staff, younger folks, that's a big, huge red flag. That's a problem. So for me, as a way to always kind of check myself, so to speak, right, is I'm always open to feedback. I love the Socratic method. When younger folks come to me asking questions that I know they have the answer within, I'll kind of employ the Socratic method to kind of make them think it through and ask the questions that I know are in them. And even by doing that, it's surprising how much I even learn about myself or things that maybe I need to do better and improve. And it could be anything from the way instructions are given, or training or a marketing program that I create, to as a digital marketer, right, one of the things that you have to absolutely be open mind to is you're going to always be learning as technology every 6 months, it seems like it's updating, right? So there in itself forces me to maintain that perspective of always being a student of the technology. Because again, once I think, oh, I know all things digital, I'm dead in the water, right?
So always be a student,
Yes.
leverage mentors to
Yeah.
help you guide your path. And then I thought it was interesting when I asked about your own growth and development, you talked about teaching others. And then you made that connection that through teaching and mentoring others, we can often learn so much about ourselves, which I
Absolutely.
think is a beautiful point. And then the final piece is understanding that you can't know everything. So make sure you're building a team that complements you. And you don't have to know everything they do, which I think most people know, but is always a friendly reminder.
Yeah, and I'll say it. One would think that that last point is common sense, but again, that's a hiccup that I've also seen in many leaders, where they're reticent to change, or they're a bit hesitant to learn. And again, it may be comfort level things, you know what I mean, or the need they esteem leadership as knowing everything. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I just don't think I'll just say I personally disagree with that notion. I think leadership is about leveraging what you know and imparting that on others, but absolutely being a sponge to continue learning yourself.
Well, and you made an excellent point that the industry in which you live, where digital marketing is center within your work, you can't know everything because the everything to know is always changing and evolving. I'm curious, what advice would you have to leaders who are sitting in a similar space about how you can equip your team to be successful and to thrive in that type of nebulous, always changing environment?
Mhm. Wow, great question. I mean, I can only base it off of what I've done, and that's just learning everything that you can. Voracious reader. I'm always looking online for, like, webinars, seminars. Again, learning from others who know better. In the areas in which I'm lacking. I make a concerted effort, conscious effort to delve myself into and find those SMEs, subject matter experts, and learn from them. And then conversely with my team, they all are on various educational tracks, whether it's webinars, conferences. I currently have one of my team members in an e-marketing program that at the end of it, she'll earn her certificate in digital marketing, which is pretty awesome. And so I would say just getting out there and learning what you don't know.
Yeah, that's critical. And what I'm hearing you say is it's not that staying on top of trends or knowledge building is just one person or one team, which is often what I see organizations do is they'll delegate innovation to a team or trend forecasting to a team. It's really empowering each person to figure out where's a space where I could own some domain expertise. And how can I build that so that all of your team members are empowered to do that learning, development, continuous improvement that enables, when you bring that together, real, true innovation and disruption?
Absolutely, Alexandra. And then, to our earlier point, what I try to do here too, again, right, to maximize the resources is on a team level, assess what the needs are, where the gaps are, and then align those with those individual conversations, right? And paths of what people are looking to do, where their interests lie, where they're looking to grow. And whenever possible, right, try to marry the two. So that way, there's a team benefit to the knowledge growth, but then there's also that individual one. And then, the very rare case where there's an instance where that doesn't meet, then that's when, talk about leadership, that's when it's time to make the executive decision of like, okay, you're gonna be the one to learn that, right? Sometimes it's myself,
Yeah.
oftentimes it's the team, but what I love is it, creating that type of environment offers that flexibility, right? To do all of that, right? Meet the individual needs and or the team needs. So
Yeah, that matching of what does the organization need in terms of development and growth, and then where do people have an interest? That's the magic of good development planning. So often, a barrier I see is that organizations aren't doing the organizational need assessment Or a second barrier is managers don't have the capability or capacity or support to be able to do that matching with their team member.
Mhm.
Um, Another challenge I see in organizations is a fear that if we invest a lot, people are just going to take it somewhere else and leave. And I'm
Wow.
curious, you have, it sounds like, made a lot of investments in your people. How do you think about that fear of investing in people and having that be a cost that bleeds out of the organization as people leave?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. You're paying forward. And, the opportunities that were bestowed upon you when you were young and coming up, you're paying it forward and investing in the future of, in this case, tourism, travel and tourism. And so the investments, more times than not, usually stay within the industry. But even if not, though, how wonderful is it to know that you were part of one's growth, whether they stay in tourism or not. I think I don't know of any hard facts, but I believe the trend is that more people stay within the industry, right? Those skills translate within the industry. And so that's the notion, the perspective of investing in these growth opportunities for journey level, career people on our team, is that, whether they stay here or they move on to another DMO or another business within travel and tourism, we all still benefit. So I love that. I just love that.
Yeah, the shift I'm hearing you talk about is a shift from focusing on just what's good for my company in the short term to what's the right thing to do for our industry, and
That's
trusting that if we're making an investment in that, that's going to help everyone and it's going to help us in the long run. So having that vision that's bigger than just ourselves and our short-term performance enables us to start thinking about investments in a different way.
right, right. And it's not to say that that doesn't happen, but it's rare. It's I believe way more so people appreciate that investment, and they stay either with the organization or, like, once they feel they're ready for that next thing, they move on, and usually within the same industry. So I don't know. I think that's the right thing to do versus what's good for me, and, like, just keeping it. That doesn't necessarily guarantee longevity either. I would argue that kind of inspires the exit, because you start to see that. You start to see the almost disingenuous reasoning for investing in a team member, and it's a turnoff.
Yeah, I'll share as a reinforcement of that point that research over the last 2 years by Gallup and a number of other reputable organizations has affirmed time and again that a lack of growth and development opportunity is among the top 3 motivators for employees to leave their job.
Interesting.
And if you want to keep your people, you have to invest in their growth and development. That's as true for a leader as it is for a low-wage worker.
Yeah.
And
even on my
it's
level,
expensive to replace people.
it is, again, I've been in organizations where they have, a terrible retention rate, and, very expensive. But what I was going to say real quick was that, I love your point about investing on all levels, because my boss, our CEO, the leadership team, we are also part of that growth opportunities. And so, for example, I am at the end process of securing my CDME. It's kind of a certificate degree within the tourism industry, and that's all the support of my CEO. And so that was really instrumental and kind of indicative of just the way he thinks. You know what I mean? And so I'm very appreciative. So yeah, I think
It's as important for leaders as it is for everyone else. There was DDI International, which does research on leadership. I recall in a landmark report they did about 2 years ago, they looked at what was the correlation between investment in leaders' growth and development and financial returns. and business impact. And there was a hugely positive correlation in terms of leaders who did the investment through coaching, skill building, capacity building within themselves had much better performance relative to peers in their same industry. So controlling for all these environmental factors, that investment was a differentiator in bottom line.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Not surprised.
So I want to make a little bit of a turn. Something in our last preparatory call for this that we talked about is, on a more personal level, some of your experiences growing up, how they shaped you as a leader. And you talked about, use the term growing up being the only one of, and how that shaped your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, and how those carried into your leadership. I'd love to just give you space to share a bit more about how that being the only one of has shaped your leadership.
Interesting. I'm one of millions of professionals that probably look like me that can probably identify with, a little bit of what I meant by that. And that is, while nowadays it's most certainly a different situation with still room for growth. But certainly in the beginning of my career, I was often the only person in any organization that looked like me, a Latino Hispanic household. And my parents were, hard workers and, really emphasized school and working hard and, never letting any of those, barriers get in the way of your goals. And so I never, really subscribed to the whole being kind of having any of those labels attributed to me. You know what I mean? It's like, if I had an end goal and I wanted to go for it, I did it, but however, though, once I was in the corporate world, you go from environments where everyone looks like you to more corporate environments where, oftentimes you're the only one, or there's just a few that look like you. It's an interesting experience where, again, on one hand, I felt like I had to work 3 times as hard, but then what was also happening was recognizing, I was able to understand the significance of what representation is, the very earliest forms of DEI, and what that meant, is like, on one hand, again, right, I never subscribed to labels. I don't want to represent any group because we're not a monolith, right? We're all different, but I'm not naive to not recognize the significance and importance of that representation, right? In an environment like that, and the opportunity to educate folks and shift perspectives and preconceptions and all of that stuff. But to answer your question, how it shaped my leadership, though, is, it really threw me in there and learning. It forced me to learn to work with individuals, teams that don't share your background, your experience, your lens on the world, and maybe even just your just opinions, whether it's political, whatever, interpersonal. And that was a priceless skill to learn, because what I learned quickly is that everyone's not going to agree with you. You're not going to agree with everyone, but at the end of the day, there's a common goal that we all have to achieve, and you just need to figure out what that way is, right? Then my first experience where I was in a job where there was a variety of people from all kinds of backgrounds and all that is when I worked for LA Metro, the transit authority. That was my first job where there were all kinds of people that looked like me and beyond, but we all have different opinions, different backgrounds, different perspectives. And so those same very skills about learning to work with people with different perspectives maintained. And so the way it's affected my leadership is nowadays, right, and especially in this whole DEI movement and all of that, representation is absolutely critical and matters. It shouldn't be the first consideration, right, when you're assessing one's ability to get the job done. But so where I feel the responsibility is being a bit more intentional and creative and strategic in where organizations look for those pools of talent. I often, one of the very common phrases I would hear from executives are like, oh, well, well, we tried. They're just not out there. We can't find African American talent. It's just not out there, or Latino talent. Like, no, you're not looking to where they are. It's like you need to go to
Yeah.
where they are and where their circles lie, right? Not them coming to you. So when we're recruiting, we make sure that we reach out to all the recruitment sources and pools that are out there. And usually by doing that, you do see the range, the mix, that diversity of applicants. When it comes to the workplaces, it really comes down to the skill set and being able to work with people who may or may not share your perspective, regardless of what they look like. But being in an environment where the only one, you're kind of sped tracked to that understanding.
Yeah, it forces you quickly to learn how to do something that everyone needs to learn, which is how to understand different perspectives, embrace those perspectives, and engage in meaningful intellectual debate and disagreement and productive conflict. And that's where, to bring it full circle to our earlier conversation, it's really important to be intentional about the culture we're creating and how we're supporting each individual in that organization to grow and develop so that they can participate fully. Because you, as to your point, were fast tracked in learning how to do that. Many people who didn't have that experience of being around people who are so different than them maybe never learned how to do that until their current workplace. And so they're going to need a different kind of support to get comfortable in those environments and be successful.
Yeah. I mean, that whole experience, was underscored during the unfortunate incident with George Floyd, where, everyone that was not of that experience would come to me asking questions, trying to understand. And again, on one hand, it was exhausting because and I'm sure people out there feel me. It was exhausting, and like, it's not my job to explain this to you. But at the same time, though, I did feel a level of responsibility in taking that opportunity to kind of create and catalyze a genuine conversation about it. So yeah, but interesting balance there.
There is no right answer to your point. It's a really personal decision. It sounds like that on any given day, the answer might be different based on how you are feeling. And I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your experience and giving me permission to explore that, because a lot of leaders are grappling with, how do we create healthy, thriving organizations that are diverse? And that continues to be a challenge. So I think your life experience and the wisdom that you've gained is and have shared is all really helpful for leaders who are grappling with that, or maybe they've done it and they want to continue making progress. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I love it. And then just one quick note. In my current job, there we have among the staff, we have great diversity, and so it's something that we're pretty proud of. I would say, though, to be honest, I would say it's more serendipity than a conscious effort to create the diverse staff that we have. But I feel that the investments we've made in the team to keep the folks that are here is a testament to that. And one of those things is feeling a sense of safety, working in an environment with people from diverse backgrounds and different political perspectives. And, we somehow still respect each other, get along, and get things done at the end of the day.
Yeah, a common thread through a number of our conversations today has been this notion of vulnerability and safety in the workplace.
Mhm.
And this is clearly a quality you value because you've demonstrated it and you've talked about it being something that you've really intentionally cultivated in your own organization. What could you share that might be helpful for other leaders about how they could be thinking about or approaching tapping into the power of vulnerability to improve the culture, improve outcomes, improve performance in their own organizations?
Wow, that's a big question, Alexandra, because I think one of the problems a lot of leaders do have, regardless of their background, just anyone that's in a leadership position, I think just the way we've all been raised and encultured to believe what a leader is supposed to be or what leadership is. And, in the stereotypical, traditional sense, leadership is the complete opposite of vulnerability. It's
Hmm.
strength. It's showing that you're indomitable, and that, that you have no flaws, and just all of that. And I think that's that's where the challenge lies. But I would say, though, that the true leaders, true strong leaders, that succeed and are able to transform not only themselves but organizations, others, are those who show their vulnerability. And I'm not talking about full-on meltdown, under crises. That's not a good example, but even simply showing that, again, that yes, I have knowledge to impart, and I am a teacher, I am a leader, but I am also here to learn. I am a student. I'm a listener. I'm here to listen as well as, speak, right? And I'm thinking of those leaders that I've had the privilege of working with, including, again, my current boss. They have enough of courage. I would say courage is another thing, ironically so, courage in leadership. But the courage to show that vulnerability, and show, like, hey, look, I have bad days too, so I get it. And you know what? Actually, that does it to, I have found it creates empathy and support from the team, because they're like, oh,
Hmm.
he's not infallible. Like, he has bad days too, and he messes up sometimes as well. And I just think it's a powerful, that showing that vulnerability is a powerful display of leadership, because what it does is it shows we're all going to make mistakes, but we all can bounce back from it, right? And when your leader shows that, it's just the best example. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is to create a culture in which people feel safe to fail, which people can grow and achieve their highest potential, that requires vulnerability. And the first way leaders can promote vulnerability in their culture is by doing it themselves. And that's setting the expectation up front that I have bad days. I'm going to expect you all are going to have some bad days. I'm going to sometimes make a misstep. I expect all of you are sometimes going to make missteps. So you're setting the expectation, you're bringing yourself into it and saying, yeah, it starts with me and I'm human just like you. And then it's being present in that moment and being willing to admit when it happens
Oh yeah, Alexandra,
and
that's
inviting people to give you grace, just like you're going to give them.
absolutely, Alexandra. I think that's just a super, super critical point that you just shared, and kind of summarized much better than I did. And also too, that whole notion that it really, again, another corny line, but it's absolutely true. It does start and end from the top. And what leaders bring to an organization, the good and the bad, it trickles down. And so if you're coming in there, again, with all of the kind of the room for improvements, as we've discussed in this past chat time here, it will be problematic. And then conversely, when you impart those better leadership qualities, it does resonate with teams. I've seen both scenarios, like great
Yeah.
leaders and awful leaders, and how it trickles down and affects the entire organization, just the one person.
That's something that when I work with clients in a growth guide capacity where we're doing real self-leadership work, we do that midpoint check-in and we explore what have we seen, where are we seeing improvements, what are the contributing factors. And people are always, even if they expected it, they're still amazed at the impact that shifting just the way that they showed up every day, the attitudes they had, the mindset they brought,
Mhm.
the body language they exhibited, the way they communicated and asked questions. Those shifts in how they showed up had tremendous ripple effects through the organization, through how other people showed up. And I don't think the power can be overstated of really focusing when you're a leader on making sure, how am I showing up as my highest self every day?
I love that, Alexandra. Look, we have, I mean, it's almost Pollyanna, but we have a wonderful cultural environment here at Visit Huntington Beach. And I will literally almost every other day, or when we have our staff meetings, I always remind the team, I'm like, hey guys, look, especially for some of the younger folks on our teams, this is, it's almost sad to acknowledge, but this is lightning in a bottle. This is not the norm in the workspace, the way we all get along, and there's just how wonderful and healthy of a workspace this is. So to create longevity in this, if you guys are digging this space, this environment, this energy, this camaraderie, this mutual respect, etc., every single day that you guys come in here, you've got to think, what can I do? What's my small part to make sure that this extends just one more day? And that really resonates with the team, and because I think I've gotten those who may not have worked in other jobs. For some of our team members, this is their first job. And so, and for others, they may not have experienced, what others have in terms, like, for example, working in a toxic environment, right? And so it's just been wonderful, and so we all joke about it. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm making sure that this extends one more day. So it's just wonderful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As we near the end of our time together, there's one question I'd love to ask you, and that is, what's one piece of conventional leadership wisdom that you think is outdated and needs to head out the door?
Well, I think you touched upon it a little earlier, because I've noticed a lot of leaders do this. You must find a way to embrace the notion that you can't possibly know everything. And once you understand that, it informs everything else you do as a leader. Hiring, recognizing what pools of talent are needed, right, to fill whatever gaps there may be, whether it's organizational or within your leadership line or just yourself, right? If it's for smaller teams. So I would say, have the courage to acknowledge you can't know it all, and your role as a leader is to find those pools of talent that will supplement what you need there, and then rely on that expertise to make those executive decisions.
Yeah. So getting comfortable with leadership is not about having an answer. It's about creating a team that can get to the right answers in any given moment in time.
Well said. Perfect. Well said.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate the time and the conversation that we've been able to have today.
Thank you, Alexandra. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me, your host, Alexandra Reese. You can find Omark on LinkedIn. Check the show notes for the link to his profile to find out more on how you can improve your leadership, life, and impact with confidence, ease, and joy. Please visit my website, opastrategy.com. That's OPA strategy.com. And then please make sure to search for Empowered Leadership wherever you get your podcasts and click to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. And if you enjoyed this one, please do share with a friend or a colleague. It makes a big difference. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.